This episode discusses themes of grief, caregiving, and traumatic brain injury, including the emotional toll of grieving a loved one who is still alive. These topics may be distressing or triggering for some listeners. Please take care while listening and prioritize your mental health and emotional well-being.
For the haters, come on, do it now or later. Yeah. It don't matter what your name is, share your story, we'll be waiting. For the haters, whoa.
Welcome back, everyone, to For the Haters. Today, we have an important conversation about grief, the kind that doesn't just come with closure, but instead lingers in everyday moments of life. Our guest is navigating the heartbreaking reality of grieving a loved one who is still alive. This episode is going to be hard for me. In 2016, her mother suffered a severe stroke and brain injury during a surgical procedure, forever changing the course of their relationship. Since then, she's taken on the role of medical POA, watching her mom's health decline while juggling motherhood, career, and the overwhelming weight of caregiving from a distance. She's here to share the complexities of this kind of grief, the pain of role reversal, the uncertainty of what each day will bring, and the heartbreaking moments of realizing that the person she once knew no longer is fully there. This is a raw and honest conversation about loss, resilience, and learning to navigate a life you never expected. Let's get into it. Jodi.
Hi.
Welcome to For the Haters. I already gave a warning to her about this one might be a little bit difficult. As everyone knows, my father was also someone that I had to grieve while I was alive, which I'm sure will be brought up throughout this. But before let's not start with the sad, all right?
Let's not.
Just life. Who are you as a person? How'd you grow up? Where are you from?
Okay, great. I'm Jodi. I grew up in a small town in Michigan called Grand Haven. It is an awesome little beach town. I kind of hate to let out my little secret, but it's getting more and more well known.
Beaches on the lake, right?
Yes, Michigan. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was a great place to grow up. I grew up with two younger brothers, like that classic nuclear family. My parents were together. It was a great life. Great growing up. And, it was a lot of fun.
Two brothers that are older, younger?
I have two younger brothers.
Did you just say that?
Maybe.
Okay. I don't know. Sorry.
I don't know.
The disassociating is starting.
Yeah, it's already happening with me too. That's good. Yeah, no. So two younger brothers, and we just had a grand old time. Family vacations, lots of time at the beach. I really have no regrets or any negative feelings towards my upbringing whatsoever.
Do you still have a relationship with your brothers? Like, are you guys still close?
Yeah, for sure. I love them. They're like my best friends.
I love that. And then what about you? Right, you have kids. Are you married?
Yes. Yep. So I'm married. My husband and I are both physical therapists by trade. We have since left the practice, which is a story for a different day. But
fascinating.
Yeah, but we have been together don't tell him. Maybe 7 years. Math is hard. 7 years.
Okay.
We've been married 7 years. We have two kids, 5 and 3. Ayla and Arbor.
So your doctorate degree is just sitting on a shelf somewhere?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, both of ours. Just tossed them.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because I have a lot of friends in that world, and it's the most schooling with the least amount of pay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is why it is sitting on the shelf doing nothing.
Because you can make so much money doing a million other things.
Yes.
Unfortunate. Anyway, conversation.
Yep. Conversation for another day.
Another day. So you've been together for 7 years or married?
No, we've been together about 9 years. Been married 7, yep.
And then kids?
Yep, we have two kids, 5 and 3.
5 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Handful. Mm-hmm. Boys, girls?
Our oldest is a girl.
Okay.
And she is like quintessential oldest daughter, sweetest pie, quiet, loves everybody, rainbows, butterflies, so classic. And then we have a 3-year-old who came out screaming, and he has been...
And hasn't stopped?
No, not at all. Not at all.
And y'all still live in Michigan still?
Yeah, we traveled for a couple of years with our therapy. We did travel therapy, so we lived all over the country. But then part of my whole mom situation, we ended up back in Michigan just to be more of a support system for my dad. So we were back in Michigan and not really mad about it. Some days I wish we lived someplace warmer still, but cost of living is crazy. And obviously we had responsibilities. So
Yeah. And just, I'm sure we'll probably get into it, but like having that time too is something that you can't trade, right?
Yep.
Like distance and location and things of those sorts. So, if you want to just start by explaining like the years, right? Like what year did your mom go in for surgery?
Sure.
When did kind of this whole new journey in life of this chapter of life start taking place?
yeah. So my mom, do you want a little background on her?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Would love that.
So she, similar to my husband and I, got a degree in accounting and then totally ditched that and went into special ed. So she was a special education teacher. And that's kind of like growing up, that was her. She just was like so kind-hearted and selfless and like was always taking care of other people. And then when I was in grad school in 2016, I was getting ready to graduate school and take my board exam. And that was all due for August. So a couple months prior, in May of 2016, she ended up in the ER and it was discovered that she had a gigantic, is literally what they call it, gigantic brain aneurysm. And our life was just kind of like put on pause because there were several neurosurgeons that needed to consult to figure out what was going to be the best strategy to deal with that. So that was in May. That entire summer was me wrapping up grad school and also thankfully going to her neurology appointments with her, which were across the street from my grad school. So that worked out great. But by the time they figured out what they wanted to do, I had graduated grad school, and they ended up scheduling a surgery for October of that year. And that's when everything changed.
And I could be wrong, but most of the time when I hear about someone with an aneurysm, it's like they catch it too late, right? Like it's like people often like pass away,
Yes.
like because of that, because it was like unknown that it was there.
Yep.
So during that May to October, were they just monitoring it then?
Yeah, she was like very under strict watch. She had like appointments. I feel like they were like bi-weekly. They put her on a lot of medications to like stabilize her blood pressure. She was really limited on what type of activity she could do. They really didn't want her changing temperatures too drastically, like anything that would kind of set it off or explode it, basically. So that was the thing, was she was fearful of surgery, but all of her surgeons are like, you could die just walking down the street.
Yeah.
Like it's either you just walk around and in the next year this thing's going to explode and you're dead instantaneously, or we try and do something about it. So that's the option that we chose. And
those are basically the only two options,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
there's no other like resolution besides surgery other than just like taking that risk, which from what I know is just like not a good risk to kind of take.
not something that we wanted to gamble with.
Yeah.
And like there's different varying degrees of aneurysms, and like some of them are very minor and you can coil them or clip them and it's, minuscule, but because of the size and location of hers, that was kind of the issue. So yeah.
So October she goes into surgery.
October, I believe it was October 6th. She went in for surgery and I was supposed to start my first job. Well, I did the following week. I like kept postponing my start date of my first big girl job just so I could be there through surgery. And I'm glad that I was because so she had surgery in October and
So 2016, and so I'm like putting dates together for myself too,
Sure.
Which is wild. 2016 was a wild year for myself as well.
Was it?
Yeah, that's the year my dad got diagnosed.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, 2016, is that the year you met your husband then?
No, I met him in 2013 and we started dating like 2015.
15? Okay. But
Yeah.
still early. Like that's like,
Yeah.
this is still early. Like Leah and I
Yes.
started dating in 2016. And so like
Yes.
all this heaviness of life that got thrown at me
Yep.
was also being thrown at her. So
Yeah, I think my husband had maybe spent 5 days with my mom prior to her surgery.
yeah.
So like his experience like with old Jules is minimal. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I guess there's some silver lining though, is that he did know her before it.
Yep.
And that because it's hard to, I mean, as you probably know now is, and we'll get into this later, it's hard to explain someone,
Yes.
someone, right?
Yes.
Like, so someone new or so, like, how do you explain like the person that someone was?
Yep. Yes, exactly.
So it's silver lining of him having those like few moments.
Yep.
I know it's something that I like, it's like value pretty highly.
Yeah.
So 2016 October, she gets surgery.
Yep. She had surgery and it was horrible. That day was horrible. Yeah. She was scheduled for surgery. They estimated it to be a 4-hour surgery. It ended up a 10-hour surgery. And the surgeon, we don't need to get into it.
Okay.
But we're going to not cry. We're not going to talk about that specifically. But
I don't think we're avoiding crying during this episode. I think that is a given, but we don't need
visuals. But yeah, so she spent about 3 weeks in neuro ICU and then eventually was transitioned to an inpatient rehab facility for 3 months. And yeah, I left with her in neuro ICU, just looking at the ceiling, screaming about monkeys. Like, it was bad.
So is that like the prognosis from that was like she had a stroke during surgery?
Yep. So what ended up happening in surgery is their original plan was to clip the aneurysm just to basically put like a cage around it so that it couldn't burst.
Yeah.
And that's what they did, but the clip wasn't staying. And so they had to keep adjusting it. And then eventually at one point it was on someplace for too long, caused a stroke. And then on top of that, because of all the adjustments, it had caused some additional, like they call it a brain injury, which a stroke is also a brain injury, but it was just like a kind of a double whammy. So she came out of surgery and they're like, it went bad. It went very poorly, but we're not sure how clinically significant it's going to be at this point. They kept her in a coma for like a week just to calm her brain down. And then they're like, we're going to send her to rehab and then see what happens. And when she came out of her coma, it was evident to me, a fresh physical therapist graduate, student, that she had lost everything on her left side. So, I knew that she was going to be down a rough road, but still optimistic at the time to see where things went. And
So is the expectation for her always to go to an inpatient rehab after that surgery?
No. Originally, they thought that it was going to be sort of just a short-term stay. Like they were hoping it would be, a couple of days in the hospital afterwards, but because of everything, and she was pretty fit prior to this.
Yeah.
So she did end up qualifying for inpatient rehab. There's a lot of things that you have to do to qualify, but
yeah, that's what, like, just from experience outside of my dad, my ex-brother-in-law became paralyzed when we were together. And so he went to a inpatient rehab for brain and spinal cord injuries. And just know from that experience, which also happens in 2016. So 2016 is a wild year. Just from that experience, I know that the decisions around inpatient rehabs are like really hard and difficult as well. Did you have like somewhere near you that was known to be like something like good, like a good place.
Yeah, that was the definite like blessing and a curse of me being in physical therapy school was like a lot of our neuro professors from my graduate school worked at a phenomenal rehab facility just down the street. And so I had a really close connection with a lot of the physical therapists there, and they're very well known in Michigan. And I'm like, this is where she's going.
Yeah.
So that was definitely the blessing. I had that, education because they presented us with different options. I'm like, now she needs to go here.
Which like
So,
a lot of people don't have that insight into,
Yeah.
because I know like for us it was just this wild goose chase of
Yep.
like, do we go close to home or do we go somewhere that's more recognized?
Yep.
And like it's a really hard decision
Yep.
for someone to make, and that decision can also alter someone's
Yes.
like life significantly, making like the wrong decision. So she's in an inpatient for 3 months.
Yep. About 3 months. She was there.
And what is that like life look like for those 3 months, right?
It was crazy.
Yeah.
So I had left. So we're from Michigan, right? And I took my first job in Wisconsin, which was like probably a 7-hour drive from where she was. So I left. My youngest brother had just moved out of state for his first like big boy job. And so it was just my dad and my other brother left at home. And they were trying to provide me with all the information that they could, but it was crazy. My parents' home that they lived in was not at all handicap accessible. And so navigating, just what's going on with my mom and then my dad dealing with that, but also realizing like, how am I going to bring her home when it comes to that? So in a whirlwind, like surgery was October. They sold the house in December. My dad moved into a handicap accessible apartment in January, just in time for her to come home. And it was just crazy.
Is your dad still working or is he retired at that point?
At the time of her surgery, she was 55 and he was 54. They're like the same age, but
young.
So they were both working.
Yeah.
So he was navigating that and working, and thankfully his boss at the time was like very understanding, like just do what you got to do because
I hate to ask this, but I know that it's like relevant for a lot of things. Like did you have any issues with insurance at all with like
Yes, lots of bills. Eventually my mom was working for the school system at the time, so it was like pretty good insurance that she had. But because of like short-term disability, long-term disability, FMLA, like all these different things that we had to go through, and then all of her rehab and then home care and stuff, we ended up having to jump through a lot of hoops to get her on Medicaid because they couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the house sale went to medical bills.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And we talk about this like consistently on different episodes too, just the unfortunate impact that the medical system has on our decisions of life. Like it's not thinking about what's best for us. It's like what we can afford. And like, it's just so fucked. Like, I think about it often with my ex-brother-in-law of like, if he didn't have insurance, the inpatient rehab is like $5,000 a day or something. Yeah. And it's like, what, just because people can't afford it, they're just gonna
get to go home and SOL.
Yeah. Which I guess could be a whole nother episode.
We're gonna like have a lot of spin-offs from this one. Yeah. Because I could go on a healthcare rant for sure.
Yeah. I can also from my current IVF journey.
Oh yeah, sure. See? Screw it.
And also from my dad's medical care, or the lack of care that there was available to him. When does it start, like, when do you start realizing that this is kind of like a new life for you? It's like the permanency of it.
I think we were all pretty optimistic still when she came home. She did great in inpatient rehab. She really did. But when she came home, she's not the same, right? So her decision making is not great. And she just reverted to some really poor habits, but because we had less than optimal caregivers while my dad was at work. She was getting away with a lot of stuff that she shouldn't have been. And so like through all that, a couple months of her being home, my brothers and my dad and I were like, okay, so like she's going downhill and there's no stopping her.
It's hard to, if the best that you can you kind of explain what that means? Like, is she wheelchair bound? Like,
yeah. So when she first came home from rehab, she was, I'll try not to be too clinical here.
Yeah.
So she could walk with a walker and like with some assistance, and she was doing fairly well. Like she could navigate the apartment and that kind of thing. Fast forward to now, she is totally wheelchair bound. She lives in assisted living because she just became so, I don't want to say needy, but she needs a lot of assistance more than like my dad could provide by himself. So yeah, at this stage, she is dependent on everything: toileting, showering, getting in and out of a chair, getting, in and out of bed. And yeah.
And like, is there any memory loss, like issues? Is it short-term memory? Is it long-term memory? Like, does she remember people?
Yeah, she remembers people. Her memory is the craziest thing. She remembers people. Her short-term memory is horrible. Like, I'll tell her things and she'll just go off on me because, you didn't tell me that, blah, blah, blah. But then like, I'll ask her about a recipe and she'll just spew it out. And I'm like, how do you remember that? But like, you can't remember your granddaughter's name. I don't understand. But
Yeah.
that is the crazy thing about brain injuries. It's just, you can't understand.
And she has all like verbal communication skills still intact. Like, her speech is.
Yeah, her speech is good. It was not. She went through a lot of speech therapy in the beginning, but by the time she got out of inpatient rehab, her speech was pretty good. So that we were thankful for. And that's kind of what we were like trying to give her hope of like moving forward. Like, you still can communicate with people and like engage in meaningful conversations.
Yeah. It's interesting for me because obviously what we do as humans is we try to relate them to our own situations. But for you, there's like with my dad, he had dementia. Yeah. So it really wasn't him, right? Yeah. Like, so the things that like came about, like the conversations, it was a real big transition.
Yeah.
So it's just, I'm trying to comprehend, like, because she's still there mentally, right? Like, is it like
she's
different?
Not the same. She's not the same. She like can have a pretty normal, I'll call it a normal conversation with you, but like, it's not the same person. And half the time she like forgets it. And then she'll also say stuff that just make absolutely no sense. Like one of the biggest issues that we run into with her as part of her brain injury is she has no real grasp of her deficits. Most of the time. Like, I got a text from her last week about, can I borrow someone's car? I'm like, you can't even stand up.
Yeah.
So like, you're thinking you're going to borrow someone's car and go where? So there's that. Like, you can talk to her, but
it's just not,
yeah, you don't know what you're going to
take it what it is. How do you mentally prepare yourself for that?
It depends. So like, we try to get together on Sundays just to like, as a family, we'll go pick her up from her assisted living. We'll go pick my grandma up from her independent living, and then we'll bring them to my dad's house. And so like on those days, it's easier for me because I'm like driving there, mentally preparing myself to deal with the chaos. But it's the times when I am like just minding my business, doing my day-to-day life, and I'll get a phone call from her and she's just like bitching and moaning about God only knows what on the phone, or like I'll get a text message like, I need to borrow your car, or all this crazy stuff. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, those really throw me off. And then the other thing that really usually gets me is like, my dad and I have co-medical POA, and he doesn't do much for himself, but usually like once a year he'll go and do something with his friends. And I swear to God, every time he leaves, she ends up in the ER. And so it's like those moments I'm like, okay, it's just me here with her, dealing with her. And I have to drop my life to go to the ER and deal with her. And those are the hard ones.
Do you feel like you and your dad are on the same page?
Yeah.
of
I
decisions?
think early on, we weren't. We were
Can I
kind
ask,
of
like, how long did he try to take care of her at home
before.
before she went into assisted living?
It was probably like 3 or 4 years.
Of her at home?
Yeah, and it was a nightmare. Just
Yeah. I mean, it is such like a difficult decision to
Yeah.
make, because obviously statistics are out there of just like what that change does to someone, and like
Yes.
what that decision does to someone. And then you go through like just this mental battle of, should I have done it sooner, or
Yep.
should I have not done it at all?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting decision to have to make, and it's really hard for like a lot, like you want to be able to give more, but like, you just can't, like it's
Yeah.
just impossible. So
Yeah, that was like definitely sort of another example of like blessing and a curse of my education, because I got to a point probably 6 months of her being home where I'm like, Dad, you can't do this by yourself.
yeah,
She needs to go somewhere for her safety and for your sanity. And he was fighting me on it for a long time, because they're married, and he wanted to take care of her, and he knew what would happen if he sent her somewhere.
yeah,
But it eventually came down to my brothers and I sat him down and we're like, look, one of our parents is already MIA essentially. Like, we need somebody to be here, and you're killing yourself taking care of her. So like, do this for us, for you.
yeah.
So that's kind of what it came down to.
Yeah, I have so many questions, and I feel like I'm trying to not jump all over the place
Yeah.
of like asking them and trying
Follow
to
the
sort.
bouncing ball,
Yeah.
as someone I know says.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like our stories are just so like similar. Not like they're just similar in so many ways that I haven't like really had conversations with people that like you can't explain it, right? Like
No.
it's really hard to explain like even all of those decisions. And I give my mom a lot of sympathy of like, having to make those. She had my dad at home, up until last year, a month before we put him in a facility. He was only there for a month or two before he passed away. And just like all of those decisions that you have to make, right? I think that and obviously like I asked for a specific reason, because I don't think that my mom and us like are like me and my siblings agreed on care for a while, which just like caused a lot of issues and caused a lot of friction and frustration. But, I don't know what I would do if I was in her position or in your dad's position of having to make that decision, because
I know it's so hard, because like I'm sure you feel extremely guilty. Like I feel guilty, but at the same time, like I have an education and I know what's best for her.
Yeah.
And like, I just had to keep reminding myself, like, if she were my patient, this is what she needs. Like, dissociate. Like, as my mom, I don't want her there.
Yeah.
But because I know that is what she needs, it's easy for me to focus on that.
Yeah. I mean, and thankfully, right? Like,
Yeah.
that reminds me of like, for me, that transition of, having to bathe my dad and having to help him go to the bathroom was really, really hard for me. But for Leah, she works, she's a PA in the ER, and like for her and so she would take that off my plate sometimes when she could. And that like her medical background, she was able to, do things or be there in moments like that were like super helpful, as I'm sure. But it's a lot, like that's a lot of weight to carry in itself. I'm curious, like, what are some of those moments that like stick out to be the hardest for you?
I think like similar to that, my dad had taken his like yearly adventure with his little boyfriends, like a fishing trip or something. And I remember I was pregnant at the time, and I was watching my mom at my dad's house overnight, and she forgot she couldn't get out of the bed in the middle of the night, was trying to like get out of bed, ended up falling out of bed, peed all over this place. I'm like, I wasn't that pregnant, but I was like, wow, here I am pregnant, cleaning up my mom in the middle of the night. Like, this is rough. Like that one was, one of those days where I'm like, yeah.
And then you feel, I'm assuming, just because I can relate, like you just feel guilty the next like day where you like kind of calm down of just like the frustration of everything.
Yeah.
And then you're just like guilty for like being mean or being frustrated. There's like no winning in that situation. There's plenty of nights like my dad would sleep over my house, and he would wake up in the middle of the night, and like I'd be crying just like, please go back to sleep, like just like you're here, you're safe, like just lay down. And then you wake up the next day and you're just like exhausted, and then you're like, how is this my parent type of situation?
Yeah, especially like I remember that night in particular, like she was all mad because she's like, I can go by myself, like screaming at me, I'm screaming at her, I'm crying, I'm pregnant, there's pee everywhere. And then in the morning, like I was probably looking really sad, and then like I think it clicked with her, and she was like apologizing to me, and I'm like, oh God, here we are, like that little glimpse of like who she was before. We're not crying. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nope.
I knew. It only took us 30 minutes, so that's at least we made it
Yep.
this far.
Okay, that's fine.
I can relate to that, of just like those moments of just clarity.
Yep.
Right? Like small
oh.
moments of like even like looking in their eyes and like seeing them as like people, and you're just like, wow. It is overwhelming. Like it's and what sucks is, you know, like I have a lot of sympathy for my mom, because I couldn't imagine if that was Leah, right? Like, and the decisions that have to be made, like I wouldn't have been able to make them. I can make it because I'm his daughter, right? Like, and I want the best for not only the best for my dad, but the best for my mom too. I've like never heard like someone say like like of those moments of just frustration, and then you're just like, oh fuck, like there's like,
that's still my mom.
Like there's still in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
To ask another difficult conversation, which I understand. You say sweet.
Sweet.
You knew what you were getting into. You also started navigating your own like journey to motherhood during this. I'm curious of what that was like for you, because this whole point is like just grieving someone that's still alive too, and so there's so many moments, like even your wedding, right?
Yes.
Like I'm curious of those decisions that you had to make like around that, and like what that process kind of looked like.
Yeah, it was a lot. Like, so start with our wedding, because that was sort of like the first big event where I'm like, oh shit, my mom is not my mom. Like I'd always wanted a destination wedding, and I'm like, okay, well, not doing that because it's not realistic to fly her anywhere. And that's kind of where it just spiraled. Like every decision that I made basically was like, okay, but how can I accommodate a handicapped person, you know, as a primary member of this wedding party? Thankfully my husband's a champ, and he just was like, do what you gotta do to like make this work. But it was hard. I mean, thankfully I have like my cousin and like my husband and my dad and my siblings who I could really rely on to like vent to about these types of situations. But as a daughter, it's different. Like I would complain to my brothers, and they're like, oh yeah, that sucks. You know, at the time they were like 20-something-year-old boys, and I wouldn't expect them to understand. But honestly, I feel like the wedding wasn't really as big of an issue for me. I mean, I was like kind of upset, but I was also like having a lot of fun at the time. I was living in California. We were living our best life, traveling around, and I was just like trying to focus on that. I was planning the wedding from afar, so I feel like I was sort of dissociated from a lot of it.
Yeah.
Like my cousin and my best friend planned most of my wedding, which,
Shout out, Kate.
yeah, shout out to Kate and Tyler.
And Tyler.
So like it was hard like the day of, because like with wedding pictures and stuff, it just was, I don't know, getting ready. Like Kate helped me with my dress versus my mom and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think it was more when I got pregnant and then had a baby where I was like, I think it got harder. Like with the baby shower, she would tell me that she was planning a baby shower, but I didn't really want to ask, but I knew she wasn't. So like stuff like that. She said she was planning a baby shower, but I didn't really want to ask. So I'd be like asking my cousins and my aunts, but I didn't want to seem needy.
Yeah.
But also I'm like, but am I having a baby shower or no? Because I'm about to like, whatever, stuff like that. And then with my like ultrasounds and stuff, she's like, oh, I'm going to come to all your doctor's appointments. I'm like, are you? Like, you're not. But it's just awkward conversations.
Do you have like those kind of conversations with her? Like, do you feel like her excitement of wedding, of babies, like, is that something that where you look at her and you feel as if it's your mom thinking of that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Like the excitement is like pre-stroke jewels and the enthusiasm is there, but the reality of like the execution of whatever she wants to do is not. So yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
And then I just get sick of like trying to explain to her over and over again, like, you can't do these things. And so I find myself like making up excuses and to her, and it feels kind of shitty. And yeah.
How do you deal in those moments of like, she would have been the perfect person to help me in this?
Yeah. Well, prime example. So my youngest has several health issues, mostly like respiratory stuff. But early on, we couldn't leave him with anyone. And being that my mom was like a special education teacher, I'm like, everyone preaches about a village and like taking time with your spouse and taking time for yourself. But when you have a child that you can't trust with anyone, and part of it is probably my anxiety, but like she would have been the perfect person. She has all the appropriate education to be able to take care of this baby and like give me 5 minutes, but she couldn't.
And what, like, besides your cousins, what kind of support system do you lean on with like having that absence?
Dana, shout out to Dana. Dana's my girl.
Is that your therapist?
Yeah. I know. I picked up Dana in the middle of COVID when I had my first baby, and I was like, what is happening here? I have no mom. I just had a baby in March of 2020, SOS. And so Dana pulled through, and she's been with me ever since.
Shout out Dana.
Yeah, shout out to Dana.
And also shout out therapy.
Yeah, shout out to therapy.
Yeah, we are huge therapy people over here.
Yeah. So therapy, Kate, my brothers. Now that my brothers are like maturing in their brains,
Yeah.
I can rely on them a little bit more.
I'm curious, what do conversations look like internally in your family now? Or, two questions. And what did that process look like for your dad of that transition from like him giving up ownership of being her primary caregiver? Was he going to visit her every day? Was her like, is that still, his life?
So early on, like my dad, I think felt a lot of guilt. You could tell that he was really struggling, but at the same time I would go over there and you could like see the relief. And I mean, it took him a little bit. I think he still has some guilt, but he goes there every day. It's like the facility she's at is less than 2 miles from his house.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So he stops by there every day, just to like see her. And then we usually bring her home on Sundays, like I said. So I think he feels better about it now. But yeah, I don't know. What's the other part?
What is the relationship look like with your brothers? Do you have conversations about just even the outlook of the situation?
Yeah. So early on, it was like a lot of me trying to educate them on like what was going on with her and like what we should expect and what kind of timeline we should expect. And then I think as I became a mom, I was really dealing with a lot of my own internal like jealousy and just resentment and that kind of thing. And so I just sort of dissociated from that whole situation. I feel like by the time I got clarity with where I was at as a mom, I came back to my brothers, and now, like, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like I don't want to say it's a joke, but like my mom will do stuff now and we're just like, oh yeah, Jules is fucked. Like,
Yeah.
like it's just, it is what it is. And like there's still moments that are scary and sad, like when she has some sort of health scare, and then I find myself being in that situation again where I'm just like providing education for them, and being sort of like their rock, I guess, because they're scared and don't really know. But now we're kind of at a place where I think everyone just is kind of accepted her for where she's at and sort of where she's going, and we're just trying to be along for the ride.
Is there any reason that is it like that she wouldn't be here for like a long period of time?
If you look like per the book, you're not going to die because you had a stroke, but she is just not healthy. She doesn't make a lot of healthy choices. And she doesn't have a whole lot of, she's very depressed and deals with a lot of pain. And I think that just being in that negative space and dealing with a lot of stuff, is not setting her up well. And since her surgery, she's had a lot of heart issues that are not related to her brain injury or stroke. So, I mean, it's kind of like a separate thing. So I feel like if something's going to take her out, it's going to be her heart, and it's not going to necessarily be related to what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel any weight that you carry from being like a medical POA for her?
Yeah, I do. Especially in the beginning when I felt like my dad was trying to stay in this like ignorance is bliss sort of situation and kind of denying what I was telling him. But now I think he's at the point where he's like, and so therefore like you're the best equipped for that, and we're trusting you. And I feel really good about my education, and my husband is smart and has a similar background. And like, so if I'm ever feeling a little bit unsure about a decision or like feeling like that's really heavy, I just tell him, and he's extremely objective. Like, and so I know if he is agreeing with me, then it's like a good choice and I feel good about it. So it doesn't sit too heavy.
Yeah. I'm curious if someone asked me this once, and I forget what the context of it was, but I was just speaking through just like the difficulties of like being like a part-time caregiver, like even like having to do that for anyone is hard. And they asked if I held any resentment that my siblings didn't have to feel that way. And for me, it was just an interesting question because I really didn't ever think of it. Like I felt angry that I had to do it, but it wasn't ever directed towards my siblings. Like it was like, I didn't want them to feel the pain that I felt like having to do it. I'm just curious what like.
I can relate to that. Like early on, I was similar to you where I was just like mad at the world that this is what we were dealing with. And then I definitely went through a period where I was pissed at my brothers because neither one of them were living in the state. And I'm like supporting my mom because she's a hot mess on the phone, supporting my dad because at the time she was still living at home. And I'm like, and I also have a husband and I also have a baby. And I'm like, I can't do all of these things. And so I was annoyed at them because they're just, 20-something-year-old boys living their best life out of state, out of mind. And I'm like, fucking come home and help me.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, like similar to you, I knew that I was the best for that job. And like, so it felt okay at the same time. Like I would have my moments when I'm like exhausted. I'm like, my baby's crying and I have to go take care of my mom right now. But also I should be doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. It's like, you just like accept that this is the reality of your life. And like, that's what are you going to do?
Right. And like, I know my mom, like pre-injury, my mom would have been mortified if my brothers were helping her. And so like that was always in my head too. Like she doesn't want them giving her a shower and that kind of thing. And like, I don't know. So
Yeah, I know I said it before, but that like transition like kind of is a really big change, right? Like that's a very big change in your relationship with them. It's no one prepares you for that, right?
No.
Like it's not something, I guess why would someone prepare you for it? But everyone's parents are going to get old at some point, and it's
yeah, that's the thing. It's just like, I think as a society, we don't prepare for that because you're like, oh, my parents are going to live till they're 70, 80, 90.
yeah.
But we're dealing with that kind of stuff when they're 50, you know? So you're like,
Yeah.
oh shit, this is happening now. Like, ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Like I'm still a child.
Yeah, right,
Like I'm
right.
still a child. Like
Right.
I'm curious if I always think about how I've never had like an adult conversation with my dad, or like, you know, navigating life, and I never really had any type of guidance from him.
Right.
Is that something that you've ever thought about or experienced?
Yeah. I will say, like, thankfully, I feel like my mom was always a really good sounding board growing up. And like, I feel like she gave really good, like, futuristic advice. And I think my foundation that I have from growing up in that household has like kind of carried me through. But I've definitely like had some feelings about, yeah, it would have been really nice to actually have a conversation with her right now as a mom of 2 kids and like navigating life, because she was a mom and had kids and like navigated life. Like our conversation now would have been so much different, but I still feel like I have like a good foundation, if that makes sense.
That's nice to have.
Yeah.
Does she have a relationship with your children? Do your children understand that there's something, you know?
Yeah. So she loves my kids. Now that they've been around long enough that she can remember their names. That was hard in the beginning, but yeah, she loves them. And like at her assisted living, they always do crafts, and she's always like making stuff for them, like these horrible birdhouses and stuff. Like it's so cute. Like, is this preschool or assisted living? I don't know, but no, it's really cute. But yeah, and as far as like my kids, they call her Grandma Wheels because she's in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? Good.
Roll with it.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah. Yep.
And your mom uses social media, I think.
She does. That is a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. And maybe this is my own fault. Like maybe I shouldn't be posting things, or I should unfriend her. I'm not sure. But like pretty much anytime I'm doing something, like last time I was with my cousin, we were up on like a little girls trip. It was like myself, my cousin, my aunt. We were wine tasting, having ourselves a grand old time. She caught wind of it and she's like, I should be there. Why am I not invited? Blah, blah, blah. And she's blowing up my Facebook page about it. And I'm just like, oh, okay, everybody's seeing her going off on my pictures. Like Jules is going rogue on the internet. But it's hard. Like those are the moments that I'm like, shit, like I feel so bad.
Yeah.
But also like, you can't come. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really delicate situation, right? Because they're physically still here.
Yeah.
And like even outsiders, like they have no fucking clue of like the severity or just like what it is and like the whys behind the decisions you're making.
Yeah, no, that is a great point. My mom has several sisters, and there was a period of time where they were always calling, texting, emailing my dad and I, well, why can't you do this with her? Why can't you do this with her? She needs to be doing this. And then finally my dad was like, well, then you do it. And they showed up and they're like, oh shit. Like, okay. Yeah. Like, unless you're here and seeing her day to day, like there's no way for you to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We went through that with our family with my siblings. We probably sounded like lunatics. So my dad went through like he started getting angry, like and violent, and it wasn't safe. It was like really bad. Like that's why he ended up coming to stay with me for like a little bit, like a couple days a week or whatever that looked like, just to give my mom a break. And I would always have to go there because I could physically handle him because he was young. He was,
Right.
in his early 60s. He was physically in shape.
Yeah.
But every holiday where all of my siblings would come up, he would be in the best mood for. But
Yes. Yes.
thankfully he was.
Yes.
But he was. But then it's like we look like idiots, like because they never see that side of it,
Yep.
or they've never had to see that side of it, and it's like.
Yeah. Yeah. No, my mom is notorious for doing that. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but like she can put on a front and I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, are you serious? Yeah. You're making us look like idiots because you've been doing all this crazy. And now you're like acting like a perfect little angel. Like, how old are you? 3? I don't know.
So it's everything about it, having someone that's alive and just dealing with like complexities. What does grieving look like to you, right? Like, what does grieving your mom look like to you?
Well, it's evolved, I think. I think at first I was like very angry and sad. I mean, it's like, what is it? The 5 stages of grief? They're not linear. That's for damn sure. So the beginning, it was just a lot of back and forth of angry and sad and angry and sad and angry and sad. And I think we're sort of now getting more towards like an acceptance type situation. But then again, like when you see those little glimmers and you're like, oh, you're still there, then it's just right back to sad. And you're like, one day at a time because
it's all like one day is all you can take.
Yeah.
Because like so much can change in day 2.
Yeah. Yep.
So you take whoever that person is and like for what they are that day and just navigate kind of that day.
Yes.
And that's it. So you mentioned therapy has helped you quite a bit.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest like lessons that you've learned during therapy?
It sounds so basic, and I don't know how many times Dana probably told me this, but like eventually got it drilled into my head. It's like focus on what your responsibility is and then that moment, because that just changed my life. Like I would be driving home from work, picking up my kids in daycare. My mom would be calling my phone and I would just get so overwhelmed with like, what should I be doing? And she's like, in that moment, like your priority and your responsibility is like getting everyone home safe and then you can reassess. So like just focusing on that moment, like getting myself grounded, mindfulness, if you want to call it that, just sort of fading out a lot of the noise and just focusing on like the next step, one thing at a time, and try not to field all of your responsibilities at the same time.
Yeah.
I feel like that's been the most helpful for me.
So what about your relationship with your husband, right? Like how does that change throughout these years? Does it make you grow closer?
Yeah.
Does it cause any friction between the two of you?
Both.
Yeah.
So early on, it was like very nice to like have a person there, especially him because he's educated and we were spending so much time in the hospital and the rehab and stuff. And then like when I was going through the sadness, I think he's, like I said, he's pretty objective person. And he didn't have a ton of experience with my mom prior to everything. And so when I would like get upset, like, oh, my mom would have been doing this in this situation, or like, it's hurting me because she's saying this or acting this way or blah, blah, blah. He just didn't totally understand. And so I felt pretty alone in that. And like you said, like, how do you explain that to someone, especially if they don't know your mom, like your person?
Yeah.
So that was hard because I was taking it like sort of personally, like he's just kind of disregarding my situation, but it was more just like there's no way for him to really relate because he's not been through that. So eventually we kind of like powered through it, and he's a great support now, especially when it comes to like a lot of the decisions that we have to make because he's educated and we can kind of combine forces and then run it by my dad and call it a day. So yeah, it's helpful.
Like I sometimes forget that like Leah is also going through something through it, right? Like having their own type of grief.
Yeah.
And I think it came about after his passing. And so like a lot of it was like, I was just like so blind by life that I didn't really think of her feelings in the matter too. And which led to conversations afterwards. Have you guys had any where like it was his feelings of the matter that we're talking about?
No, but I've been thinking about that because especially because it's been ongoing, like not only for him, well, mostly for him because I live with him and he's my husband, but
Yeah.
like for my cousin and like my best friends too. I do so much complaining and venting to them, and I'm just like, how have they not cut me off yet? You know? Because it's probably hard for them too and exhausting. So no, but I was thinking about that recently. I'm like, this is not easy for him to have a wife who's miserable because of the situation that she's going through. So
Yeah. And I want to make sure that my point is clear. It is not the burden that you are bringing onto
Fair.
some people around you, right? Like it is just that they are also having like sadness around someone.
right.
Like I think it's important that we don't think of ourselves as burdens, especially when our feelings are in place, just because that's what the people we love around us are supposed to be there for us.
Yeah.
So don't be too hard on yourself from that aspect, because I can assure you, I don't know the people around you, but I'm sure they'll be there forever for that.
Yeah.
There's no complaining. That's too much complaining. It's just, it's just recognizing that there also is some sort of grief for the other side too, because I mean, even like your cousin, it's like her aunt, right? Like that. There's still grief in everyone's like own way.
Yeah.
As we kind of start to wrap up, before we
Hopefully.
before we get to like the final kind of set of questions, any other thing that like comes to mind, right? Like when with grief, or just your relationships with your mom, with your mom, or just like events around the situation that you haven't touched on that you want to?
I mean, not necessarily. I think it's just hard because people who've had strokes, people who have dementia, people who have had brain injuries, it's just you don't know what's going to happen, and that's the hardest part. Like grieving someone who's alive is so much different than grieving someone who's dead, in my opinion, because you'll still have those moments when that person's not there, but every day it's like you just don't know. And then, I mean, you don't know if someone has passed either, but it's just a different ball game.
Yeah. Do you allow yourself, like, where do you allow yourself to have, is it your Sundays that you're with your mom, with the whole family, like allowing yourself to find moments of joy and connection? Because it's hard, like you want to remember the relationship that you had prior, but and like not just remember the difficulties.
Yeah.
So how do you allow yourself to like build upon any moments of joy now?
Well, I had such a hard time with that for a while. Like I felt like there's like years where all I remember is like negative interactions with her. And eventually I got to a place where I'm like, you know what? Anytime I have a positive one with her, instead of like just acknowledging it and letting it pass, I've been like trying to make a point of like writing it down and making sure that I tell all the people that I bitch to that like, hey, this really cool thing happened with my mom, so like let's remember this too, because it's really easy for whatever reason to like hold on to that negative. And so I've been trying to make a point of like writing it down, because I just feel like it solidifies it a little bit better in my head.
Are you able to obtain stories from your mom at all? Like past stories, like memories?
Yeah, she is like crazy. That's what I mean. Her brain is crazy. She'll throw out these random ass stories. I'm like, where did that come from? Like, you don't even know what day it is, but like, what is happening?
I would encourage you to try to maybe like hide a camera and like film her telling stories, because
that's a great idea. Because we did, for 1 year for Mother's Day, we got her, I don't know, it's not stupid. We got her a book, and it like gave you these prompts and like ask her these things. So I should film her.
You should film her. I did a For the Haters episode, like a Father's Day episode of my dad. And
oh my God. Wait, no, I saw that.
Yeah. And like, it was like someone asking him questions about being a father, and like, I'll have that for the rest of my life.
That's awesome. That's a great idea.
I definitely would encourage something along those lines. What advice would you give to someone? Like, what advice, and whether it's your experience with being a caregiver to a parent, grieving someone that's alive, what advice could you give?
I would say get yourself in some therapy. No, and then just make sure like you have your people, because there's literally no way that I could do it if I didn't have like my core group of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those would probably be my two biggest things. But
What do you hope someone takes away from listening to your story?
hopefully they, I don't know, feel inspired to reach out to someone if they're really struggling with it. Or even at the very minimal, just like hearing my story and knowing that they're not alone if it resonates with them. So those are kind of...
If you're comfortable with it, if someone wanted to reach out to you, what is the best way that someone could contact you? Whether it's socials,
Probably
or
socials
email. I'm
Yeah.
not going to give people
Yeah.
your phone number.
text me. No, socials or email probably. Yeah.
What I'll put them in the description, but
Yep.
what is your Instagram? Is it Instagram would be your best?
Yeah, probably Instagram. It's at BG Jodi, JODIR. Or my email is my last name, rickfelderj@gmail.com.
Okay. And they'll be in the description too.
Sweet.
My final question for you.
I don't know, nervous.
Is if you could tell your younger self anything, what would it be?
Ooh, you're doing a great job. I don't know. That's a great question.
And at whatever age your younger self is, right?
Yeah.
Like it could be your early 20s, but it also could be a 10-year-old self.
I feel like I did a pretty good job of like staying true to myself and staying the course. So just reminding myself that that's what you got to do.
That was great.
That would be it.
That was great. Well, Jodi, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. Your honesty about the reality of grieving someone who is still alive is something so many people will connect with but barely talk about. It's a painful, complex, and ongoing process, and you've given a voice to an experience that so many people struggle with in silence. To anyone listening who is dealing with this type of loss, the loss that could have been, the longing for a relationship that isn't the same, please know that you are not alone. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time on For the Haters.
For the haters, come on to it now or later. Yeah. It don't matter what your name is, share your story.